Well, I'm back to Ask Margaret. This is back in the drug days again, and a story about, you've heard me talk about Dee, who was a really good friend of mine. In fact, he was my youngest daughter's godfather, and Walt, who was one of Dee's best friends and one of my best friends. Anyway, Dee, because of the drug abuse, had uh, really taken its toll, and he got very, very sick. He started swelling up and liver damage, and anyway, he got very sick and ended up at my house. And I tried to call 911 a couple of times because his lungs were filling up, and he was definitely in distress. And I knew he was about at the end, so he wouldn't let me call 911. He made me take him over to his sister's house, Narita's, because he didn't want to die on my couch in front of his goddaughter, which, looking back on it, um, he loved her and loved me, and he was scared. Anyway, it made a lot of sense. So I took him back over to Narita's, and on the way over there, I told him, I said, hey, you want me to call Walt? And he said, nah, you know, I just don't want a bunch of people. He said, I know it's bad. He said, just drop me off. Say your goodbyes and drop me off. So I hugged him and watched him barely make it up to Norita's front door, and that was the end of it. But I did go home, and I did call Walt and told him that Dee was very bad, that he was swollen up, and I didn't think it was going to be very long before we were going to lose Dee. And so Walt said, well, I'm on my way over there, Margaret. I'll let you know what happens. So the next morning, the phone rings. In fact, it woke me up, and I pick up the phone, and it's Walt. And he said, hey, Margaret, I'm just calling to let you know Dee passed this morning. And I said, oh, wow. And I started to cry, and Walt goes, yeah, well, we don't have time for you crying right now. He said, do you know where Dee's car's at? Now, Dee had a 63 Chevy, and this is, at the end of Dee's life. So his dealing drug days were over, and his nice cars were over, and this was what he ended up with, was the 63. It wasn't a bad looking car, but wasn't in top shape like Dee, like you were used to seeing Dee in. Anyway, so Walt said, do you know where Dee's car's at? And I said, yeah, it's over there on Saponi in West Pittsburgh. He said, well, we need to go get it. He said, do you have the keys? I know Dee was staying with you. And I said, no, I don't. Um, he called me from the hospital. I picked him up at the hospital. So he didn't have his car with him. He told me it was on Saponi. That's the only reason why I know. He said, do you know where about on Saponi? And I said, yeah, I know where he was kind of hanging out at. And he said, well, I'm going to come over and pick you up. He said, we need to go get his car. One of the last things he said is he wants me to pick up that car, sell it, and give the money to Chopper, my youngest daughter, who was his goddaughter. He wanted her to have it, have the money for the car, or have the car, or whatever. So I said, yeah, well, come by and pick me up. So Walt comes by and he picks me up. Now, I gotta tell you, Walt packed a gun for years, all the years that I knew him. And he wasn't the type of person, looking at Walt, you'd never know he had a gun in his boot, but he did. And the first time I discovered that he packed a gun, I asked him, why in the hell are you packing a gun, dude? And he said, Margaret, I was raised in Pittsburgh. You pack a gun in Pittsburgh. And I said, whatever. But I'd never known Walt to pull it. He wasn't like Dee. Dee would go crazy. He packed a gun too, but he'd get high and get pissed off at somebody and pull a gun on them. And then my husband would have to intercede and stop Dee from doing something stupid, or he'd fire it off. I know one time he fired it off in a restaurant one time and almost got my husband and himself arrested for it. But anyway, getting back to this. So, Walt packs a gun. Everybody knew that, including me. So anyway, Walt comes and picks me up, and we head over to Saponi. Now, this particular area is drug infested, and everybody there that Dee knew was pretty into drugs. And so we pull up, and I said, I think it was that guy, the car was parked out there, and I said, I think that garage door is where that guy lives, and that's who's got Dee's keys. So Walt said, man, I'm not in the mood to ask him. He said, don't tell him Dee died, because then he's going to want the car. He ain't going to give us the keys. He said, just tell him that Dee wants the keys. He knows you, and he knows you're Dee's best friend, and that's where Dee's staying. Just tell him that Dee sent you over to get the keys. I said, okay. So I get out of Walt's truck, and I go over, and this garage door slides sideways. So I pull up to it, and I knock on the door, and this guy opens this slider about this far, and he sticks his head out, and he's all tweaked out. He said, yeah. And I said, Dee sent me over to get his keys. He said, later, when he shuts the door. Oh, fuck. So I knock on the door again, and he opens it again, and he puts his head through this little crack and goes, yeah. And I said, I need Dee's keys, dude. And he shuts the door. Fuck. So I walk back over to the truck. Walt's sitting in. I said, he's not giving me the keys, Walt. He goes, fuck. So Walt gets out of the car, out of the truck, and comes around the truck. He says, come on, come with me. So I walk up there, and Walt, bam, 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 bam. Same thing. The guy opens it about this far, and it was kind of like that movie, I'm Back, is how crazy this guy was. So he opens the door, he goes, yeah. And he said, motherfucker, I need Dee's keys. Slams the door. Walt just shakes his head. Bam, 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 bam. And the guy opens the door a little bit wider. Walt grabs him, pulls out his .38, puts it up to this dude's head, and he said, give me the fucking keys. Dee just died. He's my best friend, dude, and I don't mind putting a bullet in your head. And I'm going, oh my God. So the guy gives him the keys. No problem. Walt's got the keys, and we're walking back, and Walt looks over at me, and he tosses me the keys to his truck. He said, follow me. He said, I know ain't no fucking gas in it. He said, follow me up there to the gas station. We'll fill this bitch up and take it over to my house. I said, okay. So I hop in Walt's truck, and I'm thinking to myself, wonder if he's ever driven Dee's car, because I have. Anyway, so Walt gets in, and he starts it up. Now, mind you, Walt's a cruiser. I don't think I've ever seen him punch a car in his whole life unless he's pissed off, and Walt Mello don't get pissed off very often. So anyway, he flips a U, and he heads back down a little past the road, and I'm right behind him. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope he knows there ain't no bolts in that front bucket seat. And as I'm thinking that, Walt punches it onto Willow Pass Road. Seat goes back, and you see Walt's legs come up, and he slowly pulls it over. He's way back in the back seat. I'm laughing my ass off. I pull over to the side. I jump out of the truck, and I help him get the seat up. He gets out of the damn car, and he said, what the hell? What the hell, Margaret? What the fuck? And I said, he didn't have no bolts in the bucket seats. Walt goes, I can see that. You could have told me that before I fucking got in it to drive it. I said, well, I didn't know you were going to punch it like Mr. Bass. We both stood there and laughed for about 20 minutes, and I said, you know something, Walt? That's Dee's way of saying, see you later, dude. And Walt looks at me and said, yeah, I know. So that's the story of getting Dee's car off of Saponi. And the funny thing is about 2-3 days later, before we bury Dee, Walt shows up to my house, knocks on my door. I answer the front door, and I said, hey, what's up? He said, you got Dee's car? I said, no. Remember, Walt? We took it to your house. He said, it's gone. I said, what do you mean it's gone? He said, the car ain't fucking parked in front of my house. I said, did you give the keys to anybody? He goes, no. And I said, well, why would I have it? And he said, I don't know. You know, he wanted Chop to have the car. He says, I thought maybe you might have picked it up. I said, no. About a week later, we found out that it was found on Highway 4. One of Dee's nephews had a key to the car and saw it parked in front of Walt's house. And Walt had lived in that house for 20 years. And he just got on it and took it. And then it got towed, I guess, to the wrecking yard. So we weren't able to sell the car, and actually Walt and I had come to the conclusion that we were going to sell it and get him a marker. So Dee doesn't have a marker, but we know where he's buried at. But anyway, that's the story of getting Dee's car after he passed away with Walt in the driver's seat. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please make sure you hit subscribe to Ask Margaret and hit like. We do have a lot more stories, and the Shit on Me story is coming. I'm waiting for a while before I post that one, because that one's the best. So have a great day, and I hope you're blessed as much as I am. Thanks for watching.